Tonight on Marketplace, they come after you.
This has to be paid by close of business today.
Whether you owe money or not.
Pay your bill, pay your bill, pay your bill.
When debt collectors are wolves at the door. And you are their prey.
They don't care where you get the money. They don't care if you rob a bank.
Can you count on the rules to protect you?
If you crack down, wouldn't that be sending a message to others? We mean business. Stop doing this.
We're putting out a call.
I'm Rita Challey. Coming up, a special broadcast of Ontario Today.
Teaming up with our Ottawa colleagues at CBC Radio.
We're working with CBC's Marketplace. I can see that our phone lines are lighting up.
To put debt collectors to the test, hoping the anonymity of radio will encourage people to speak out. We ask listeners to share their stories, talk about what's become a disturbing trend.
I was just pulling my hair out.
For people in debt.
The person was threatening me physically, so it was...
What were they saying?
That he was going to come with a buddy to my house.
Canadians are $1.5 trillion in debt. We're missing bill payments. So it's no wonder debt collectors are calling. We hear from people hounded by debt collectors. They say, cross the line.
Debt collectors are like having a wolf or a pack of wolves at your door.
We've got a collection agency chasing us for $100, and it was scary and it was ridiculous all at the same time.
Complaints like these are piling up across Canada. In Ontario, collection agencies have topped the list when it comes to complaints. There are thousands of them. For good reason. Debt collectors are supposed to follow rules. But as you're about to find out, they're being broken. Just ask David in Toronto. He doesn't want his last name used because of the stigma of being in debt. He racked up a visa bill in university, then started getting calls for $1,400.
It was like 2 or 3 months of it. Every single day. 4 or 5 times a day. It was a horrible, horrible time in this house. Like, most phones were unplugged most of the time.
David's collector is from Partners in Credit. He demands a down payment of $400, but David doesn't have it. So he calls back to figure out a plan he can afford.
If you're looking to play games, I don't have time for that. I'll end this call. I'll send my recommendation.
David records one of the calls.
I'm not looking to play games. David. I never received any sort of... You are looking for a stalling tactic. It's not going to happen.
I had forgotten how bad this tape was, actually. It's relentless, and you can't sleep at night because you're worrying about it. It's the only thing you think about.
We're looking for your experiences with...
We're not saying it's okay to not pay money you owe. It's a collector's job to collect. But at the radio station, David's story's starting to sound all too familiar.
I get that anywhere up to 5 times a day, anywhere between 8 a.m. and 1 a.m.
She was rude, she was ignorant, she swore at me, she threatened me. You know, it was right off the chart. It was off the wall.
Jim Covart calls his experience off the wall, too. He says he was getting up to 8 calls a day.
It sort of degraded into people like you should pay your bills. At one point, one of the gentlemen was screaming, just pay your bill, pay your bill, pay your bill, at the top of his lungs on the phone. And they really didn't want to know the facts. They just simply wanted the $100 that we didn't know.
Yep, it was a billing mistake. Covart spends almost a year fighting over that measly $100 out of principle.
There was no logic, no reason, and so we just sort of dug our heels in and said, no, we're not being threatened to pay $100 we don't owe.
So what's going on? All collection agencies are bound by provincial rules meant to protect us. In Ontario, they're spelled out in the Ontario Collection Agencies Act. Lawyer Mark Silverthorn knows that act inside out. He's written a book all about debt collectors and estimates at least a quarter of agencies use strong-arm tactics.
Not only are bill collectors in Ontario breaking the law, but as far as I'm concerned, the Ontario government is not enforcing existing laws designed to protect Ontario consumers from abusive and harassing behavior by bill collectors.
Silverthorn used to be a wolf at the door, using his legal muscle to scare people into paying up.
I represented collection agencies for 12 years. And I think in fairness, I'm going to have to represent consumers for at least 12 years to undo all the damage that I did over those 12 years.
We ask for his legal opinion on David's call.
They will do what they need to do, so be very careful about that, which means I'll give you an example.
Check out these tricks some collectors use to skirt the rules, sometimes even break them. Trick number 1, misleading statements. According to the Act, no collection agency or collector shall give any person any false or misleading information.
What does moving forward entail? That's where the attorneys and lawyers get involved.
Notice how the debt collector doesn't say David will be sued, he suggests it, works in the gray zone, misleading David.
Collection agencies collectively across Canada only sue about 1 out of 10,000 accounts. I know that they're not going to sue my client, and I know that the person who's calling me is probably 21 years old, and that person is telling me that they're going to sue my client. Yeah, forget it.
Trick number 2, telling family and friends. No collection agency or collector shall contact or attempt to contact a member of the debtor's family or household. We tell Silverthorn David says his debt collector got his family involved.
They are not allowed to disclose the existence of a debt to anyone other than the person who is legally responsible for the debt.
He wanted to pressure everyone in this house into making me put that money in the account right away.
And trick number 3, not notifying in writing before calling. No collection agency or collector shall make a telephone call before the 6th day after mailing the written notice.
Okay, you're asking a 7th time now again. This is really getting redundant. I realize that. Yeah, next time you ask, I'm just going to hang up.
David says he never got that letter before his calls started.
If the collection agency is not doing that, they're breaking the law.
And when David tries to arrange a payment plan, $50 a week, the debt collector cranks up the pressure.
You're not listening again, David. David, you're making yourself look really bad right now. A settlement offer will be $1,000 within the next 24 to 48 hours.
Kovart says he didn't get a letter from his collection agency either, Global Credit and Collection. We check out Global too. It's not popular either, with an F.
They can't say I'm
So why are rules being stretched? Lack of enforcement for sure.
Let's take another caller.
But in the radio booth, industry insiders shed some light.
I had absolutely no training whatsoever. I was put on a phone and said, get the money. That's it.
The bill collector is paid commission to collect the debt, so he's motivated to try to get as much money as he can as soon as possible.
Commission. Yep, we check out some job descriptions, and the focus is clearly on cash.
It would encourage them to say, why don't you take the gold fillings out of Granny's mouth to get the money? If collectors are on commission, they don't care where you get the money. They don't care if you rob a bank. They want to just scare you so you go out and find the money.
Finally, David's agency gives him the option of paying a lump sum, $700. But we want to know why David had to go through what he did. So we make some phone calls of our own.
Hi, it's Erica Johnson calling. Just wondering if someone from your company could call us back.
We eventually hear from them by email.
From Partners in Credit, we have no comment.
When collection agencies go too far,
we're putting debt collectors to the test.
They went too far. They went beyond the law. They either didn't know or didn't care.
Finding out what rules they break to pull in the dough.
You can't suggest that you're going to show up at their work and watch them collect their tips. That's just nonsense.
Jim Kovart's credit rating was threatened too.
Here we are in our 50s, and we've got a collection agency chasing us for $100, and it was scary, and it was ridiculous all at the same time.
So who's cracking down on collectors? We head to Ontario's Ministry of Consumer Services to talk to the Registrar of the Act.
Nice to meet you.
Brian Pitkin enforces the rules meant to protect us.
We've spoken to a lot of people who feel they have been harangued by collection agencies. What are you doing to protect these people?
What those people need to do is to make a complaint.
Make a complaint? But many have. In Ontario, about 20,000 in the past 5 years. And how much were collectors fined? All told, less than $110,000. Compare that to a recent charge by the Federal Trade Commission in the States. They fine an American collection agency $1.75 million.
But what incentive is there for debt collectors to stop acting this way if they're just going to get a slap on the wrist?
I mean, we charge people, the courts make decisions, and they impose sentences. We don't do
14
that.
times in 5 years.
That's correct.
That doesn't seem very high.
Charges are virtually the last thing that we pursue.
But if you crack down, wouldn't that be sending a message to others? We mean business. Stop doing this.
At the end of the day, the courts do what they will.
Jim Covart doesn't feel protected by the rules, so he tries to solve the problem himself. But one day, things get worse. A legal letter arrives.
I am the lawyer for Global Credit and Collections. I've been asked to consider what further action Global Credit and Collections should take with your delinquent account, including possibly commencing legal action. That's the scary part.
Covart gets 2 stern letters from a Markham, Ontario lawyer, Deanna Natali. That's not against any rules, but...
You start thinking, wow, it's a lawyer. It's going to go to court. I'm going to have to get a lawyer. It's going to get expensive. So there's a level of fear.
Turns out, Natali and Global are also behind these draft statements of claim that make it look like you're being sued. There are lots of complaints about them online. Under the Ontario Collection Agencies Act, a collection agency can't send these documents. But lawyers, they're not covered by the same act. Brian Pitkin sent this letter to collection agencies back in October 2008, calling draft statements of claim deceitful and misleading. But it didn't work.
In this letter, you say, I ask that you cease and no more will be said. You ask that they cease. It doesn't seem like you're exactly cracking down.
I do not have the authority to order them to do anything.
But you say in this letter that you have the capacity to order them to stop doing this.
Well, when I tell them to do something and they don't do it, then we have to go to the next step.
But it takes Pitkin 2 years after sending his letter to finally meet with Global Credit and get them to stop. Lawyer Mark Silverthorn says that's just not enough.
As far as I'm concerned, the Ontario Collection Agencies Act means absolutely nothing if there aren't consequences, serious consequences for breaking the law.
Silverthorn says Ontario needs a better law, like in BC, where lawyers and collection agencies are covered by the same rules when it comes to collecting.
We've heard from lots of unhappy people who feel they're being hounded and not protected. Why not just get the act changed?
It really is a matter for the government to determine what its policy directives are, but it is not for me to tell the government what it should do.
But in your position on the front lines, do you think that consumers need better protection?
From collection agencies?
Mm-hmm.
We have the act and we administer as best we can.
So, what about the collectors?
Thank you for calling Global.
We asked Global Credit for an interview.
We've been trying to reach you for an interview.
We've left a few messages. Just like them, we call over and over.
Could you please call us back? Wondering if someone at your agency could call us.
But they refuse to talk, claiming privacy issues.
We are prohibited from providing any comments.
Next, we call lawyer Deanna Natali and send emails. Her lawyer declines by email too.
The situation is simply too fragile.
Ontario Society.
So who's left? There's the Ontario Society of Collection Agencies. You figure they'll talk to us.
Could you please call us back? Please give us a call back. Call us back. We'd like an interview with you.
But guess what? They refuse as well.
Yes, wonder if you could help me.
As for Jim Covart, he does some calling too. And learns his case has been closed, but nobody called to tell him that.
I look at the time I've spent writing faxes, writing letters, the harassing phone calls for months on end, and people should know to not give up.
A hard lesson to keep in mind if the collectors come calling.